I'm going to show you a trick that we use for costuming. What we're going to do is we're going to use our extra extension hair and we're going to create strip lashes so that we can match our extensions to our makeup. We are using our ShapeShifter monofiber extensions. This is a 12-inch length, but you could really use just about any type of extensions for this process. We are using our weaving thread in black. We have 2 perm rods here. These are just different sizes of perm rods, and we're going to use these at the end of our process in order to shape our lashes into this nice curl pattern. I'm using these lashes just as a guide. We're not actually going to be using this for this process. Some tweezers, and I have a liquid nail glue and then also a crazy glue gel. Any type of liquid nail glue will work for the sealing process. This gel glue is more for if we wanted to just add embellishments onto the top of our lashes, like jewels or laying in other types of colors over the top. We will need a pair of tweezers, scissors to cut our extension hair just to shape it in. You might need some toothpicks just for extra guidance, and then brushes and combs are just helpful if your extension hair gets a little bit unruly. So let's take a look at how we start the knotting process. So what I've done for our setup is I've used our weaving thread and I've put it across the top of 2 risers. I used perm rods in this case, but you can really use anything that you want. So Sharpie markers or anything that you have laying around will work just fine. And I've taped it securely so this can be basically over our work surface. I did put down a piece of paper. This was really more just so that you could see what we're doing. You don't need to have anything underneath it. I'm going to take our extension hair and I'm going to use these as our example. And when I double it over, that's about as big as our cluster will be at the base, and that will be the cluster size coming off of it. For our purposes, I want it to be a little bit thinner, so I'm going to take less hairs. So I'm going to use about half the amount. I'm going to double it in half. Then I'm going to position it underneath, like that. And then all I'm going to do is pull those 2 tails through that loop. You can do that with your fingers, you can do it using your tweezers, but you're gonna basically have that loop down at the top, and then you're gonna use your tweezers to help guide that into place and pull it really tight. You don't wanna pull it so tight that your thread comes off, but you wanna pull it tight enough so that that knot shrinks down to the bottom. And that is your first lash. So we're just gonna continue creating this until we've created our color pattern, and you want it to be about as wide as you would expect your finished lash product to be. If you're not sure, make it just a little bit wider, and you can always cut those shorter from side to side when you're finished. For my next lash, I'm going to do a little bit with color variation. I'm going to use a little bit of the dark, and then also a little bit of the green. So this is what that blend looks like. It's really subtle until you see the finished product. This was a solid green, and this is going to be a blend. Okay, so this is me putting the second piece in place. I'm just going to grab it, use my tweezers to help me pull that over. Now when you're putting them in a line, you're gonna wanna get them fairly close together because you want your strip lashes to be full and not splotchy. So you're just gonna tap that into place. So before you pull it, just make sure that it's where you want it, because it's gonna be hard to move once you shrink that knot down in place. Okay, so that's our second. And you can see I used a little bit more hair than I did on the first one, and that's what that will come out looking like. So make sure that you try to get them to be a similar size. You can always fan them out later if you like, but for now we're just going to keep them nice and tight. So we're just going to continue the same process, putting these lash clusters on our strip. Oh, by the way, doing smaller pieces, your knots stay way better because those knots get a lot tighter. Sometimes you might end up with a random piece of hair. Just go ahead and pull that out because it's going to be hard to make the loop with shorter hairs in there. We are going to continue this process until we've created our entire width. If you're not sure how wide to make your lashes, you can use your example lashes to come in and measure that length for you. So we're just going to match up the sides and then use our form and rotate that around. And as you can see, we need to add maybe about 1 centimeter more to this side of our lashes. So I'm just going to continue adding extra pieces of hair until we have reached our desired width. Our next step is to secure our lashes, so we need to make sure that our density is correct. If you are looking for lashes that have a more tighter pack, they'll look more full, and these lashes up front, these ones have a bit more of the knotting that is spread out. So depending on how you like them and the look that you're trying to go for, you can either do a tighter density or one that's a bit more spread out. Our next step is going to lock that into place as we apply a bit of adhesive along this line. So right now I'm going to make sure that all of these are packed in tightly because I want a lash that's closer to that. So I'm going to use these and slide our lashes so that they are all tightly together. Oops. And if you accidentally pull one out like that, we're just going to tighten that back down. I'm gonna find its 2 tails and pack it down at the base. That's why it's easier to slide all of these when you first put them on than at the end. So have your game plan in place before you start doing it, and that will be really helpful. Okay, so that is a little bit more tightly packed. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull all of the hair out and make sure that my base is as tight as I can get it. You can use your tweezers to help you pull in at the base. Basically, you just want to make sure that all of those loops are as close to that thread as you can get them. I am using a nail adhesive, and this is a very liquid product, so I'm just going to hold it and just apply a light amount right onto my knots. You want to make sure that they're fairly well coated. You don't need a ton of excess because you're just trying to get those knots to hold. So we're just going to let that dry, and then we'll move on to the next step. So as you can see, we've barely even touched the amount of extension hair that we have. We could do this for days and not run out of hair. The next step in this process is to shape our lashes. So we are going to comb out the hair so it's straight, and we are going to position our rod underneath. If we had 2 of these, we'd want to make sure that we're using the same size. Also, because our rods are a little bit of a bow in the center, I'm going to position the area closest to the interior of my eye towards the center and make a little bit of a wider curl out on the side. It's really subtle. If you're doing this with 2, make sure that you're doing it in the opposite spots. So I'm going to position this one here. I'm going to take my towel, put some freshly boiled water on it, and then just lay it over the top so it shapes that curve. So my towel is wet with freshly boiled water. I'm just going to position it over the top. You want to make sure that that hot water is touching your extensions. That's how that gets that bend in there. Once it's cool, we're just going to lift away. And it looks like we have bend on this side, but it doesn't look like that heat touched this side, so we're just going to repeat that process until it has a nice curl. This is really hot on your fingers, so just be careful. Once you've gotten your water to cool, it's okay to remove the towel, and you should see your shape pretty well kind of set. If you have any spots that aren't quite right, you can go ahead and do the same process and heat it over again. That's not going to hurt anything. Just make sure that when you do, you make sure that that hair is straight and you're not pushing it in a different direction, because the hair will literally take the shape that you put into it. So we're going to remove our rod, and that is now our upside down lash, and we're going to flip it over and give it a haircut. So I'm just going to undo my tape, because I'm going to actually reuse that tape. I'm going to leave a bit of the thread on either side. Flip it over, and I'm going to use an old tray from some lashes to kind of shape it and help me see how long I want to leave these. And actually, I have that a little backwards because that was supposed to be my edge right here. I'm going to use the tape and just tape them into place. That's my one side. I need to actually pull that over a little bit. Okay. Now that other side. Doesn't she look beautiful? Okay, so now we're going to get rid of all of this excess length and compare it to our example lash. So this is what our example lashes look like. So we have a little bit longer length here and a little bit shorter length here. So I'm just going to follow that as a rough guide, and we're gonna get rid of all of this length. So we're gonna get rid of the length first, just so that we can see kind of what we're working with and get it out of the way. Now obviously you can leave these really long like this. This actually looks pretty cool, but we're gonna try to shape it up so that it matches a design that we already like. So we're just going to go in and make sure that this is in place. You don't want this to kind of bow out and then kind of mess up your haircut. Another thing to note too, if you are using dull scissors, these ones are not the sharpest. So when I am actually cutting the hair, it's actually pushing the hair over. So you want to be careful on your cuts so that your hair is actually staying where you want it to be cut at. If that becomes a problem, you can point cut into it a little bit more severely, and that typically makes your cut length shorter so that you're not pushing that fiber over as you cut it. It also softens your ends. I'm gonna actually switch scissors. These ones are a little bit sharper. And I'm gonna do some detail cutting to soften these ends. A little bit bulky right here, and I don't like that, so I'm going to soften that out. It's also a really great idea if you have these old palettes from previously worn lashes, save them, and that way you can cut kind of these trays off down here and give you a really nice guide for cutting all of your new extension lashes. And right now I'm cutting in a little bit more severely to just kind of feather out the ends. And I'm going to lift this up a little bit because I can't quite get under this tray. So I'm going to lift that up and feather out just this interior corner. And you're just going to continue cutting like this until you have the shape and the softness that you want. If you're looking to do things that are a little bit more pointed, you can come in and actually create those points in there like that, just by doing that point cutting. So this shows our finished haircut. So at this point, we're just gonna do some detail work and just pull any of the excess lashes that are kind of sitting a little too heavy in clusters, like to the sides. Which is, honestly, that's really nitpicky, so you don't need to, but it's just, you know, it's those little details that kind of make that finished product perfect. So once we've done that, the last step is to simply cut away the excess thread. So I'm going to remove these from our template. I'm going to find that edge. And we're just going to kind of work that into a curve. You can always do the hot water trick to help this curve in the beginning, but it may affect your curve here, so you may have to recurl your lashes after that. And this completes our finished lash, better than store-bought.